Hello, everybody. It is August 13th. It's been about 2 months, and I've got one hell of a movie selection to show you. It has been a busy summer. I've been working a lot. I've been saving a lot. I've been going to a lot of conventions. So it's been great. The stuff I bought at Flashback Weekend is not in this. I have not even watched any of that yet. So in October, I'm looking to do a mostly horror-themed update for October, so I bought a lot of horror movies when I was at Flashback Weekend. I'm gonna wait until September to watch some of those till I get closer into the season. But until then, this is everything I got pretty much throughout the whole summer since June. So here we go. And the first one is from a franchise that I absolutely champion, in case you couldn't tell by the shirt I'm wearing right now. It is, of course, Fast X. I got the Steelbook version to match all the other ones I have. The Fast and the Furious movies is the one series that it just seems like is the only mainstream series that it is okay to just shit on and talk down to and say, this is the one franchise that needs to end, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry, guys. I love this franchise. And in my opinion, Fast X is the best sequel since 6. It is the most focused with the story, the revenge element. Jason Momoa is hands down the most entertaining, greatest villain the series has had. I saw it opening night. I went the night after opening night to see it with Jackson and Levi. The cliffhanger has me so stoked to see where things are going to go for Fast 11. Hopefully the last one. As much as I do like this series, I do think it is definitely time to end it. But with that in mind, absolutely love Fast X. As if you couldn't tell by this shirt, which is through Charlize Theron and Jason Momoa through a charity. So I got that. Opening night, got it with this cup. And then as if that wasn't enough, I did buy the Dominic Toretto Charger popcorn bucket. And not only did I buy the Best Buy exclusive Steelbook, I also got the Target exclusive edition so I could get these character cards. So yeah, I'm a fan, but I thought Fast X was great. Jason Momoa, there are certain scenes in it that feel like they're from a horror movie. So I know it's the trendy thing to do to shit on the Fast and the Furious movies, but I don't care. I love all of them, and that's the only series I get excited about. In a similar note, I wanted to check out Need for Speed, which I have never seen before, and overall it was pretty entertaining. I didn't really like this to the same level I liked any of the Fast movies, but it's got a good plot, good setting. Rami Malek in particular has a really crazy scene in there. Some really cool stunts. I do appreciate that most of this movie was done all practically, which is a hiccup. Some of the Fast movies are definitely very CG heavy. So it's always nice to see practical car stunts. I grew up loving the car chase movies of the 70s with Burt Reynolds and stuff. So anything car related like this, I'm usually an easy sucker for. Then a couple of years ago, I went through the Cube movies. Cube 2 Hypercube, and Cube 0. I really like the original Cube. Great, really creative, horror thriller. Cube 2 Hypercube is dog shit. It's boring, it's weird, I'm not a fan of that one at all. It's not even a horror film. And then Cube 0 is a very, very, very B-movie version of Cube, especially with the villain, but I was entertained by it. So now through Terror Vision, I picked up the Japanese remake of Cube. And at first I wasn't really sure what direction to take with this and what I really thought about it, but at the end of the day, I actually really like this one. It follows closest to the original Cube, but there are certain things that this does that are totally different than any of the other ones. Like this, for example, the third act and how this plays out and ends is completely different than any of the other Cube movies. So it was fascinating to watch this, to see the different take on it. Some of the character motivations and the backstory and some of the social commentary felt a little weird, and those were the kind of points that pulled me out of it a little bit. But then some of the other riskier, more different things they did with the concept, I really enjoyed. Like, the ending is interesting. There's certain aspects of it that don't work, but I'm like, that's something. I will say this, out of all the Cube movies, this is the only one to have a definitive conclusion to it, at least mostly. So that was nice, and overall, I did enjoy it. I know it's getting absolutely shit on, but I don't think this is that bad. If you think this is worse than Hypercube, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't agree at all. I would probably put that one second to the original. It is really well made, and usually I'm not a subtitle guy. There is no English dub on that, but if I'm into the story enough, I could put up with the subtitles, and that was one where it really wasn't a problem. Now this was a blind buy. I don't know what the hell I was thinking when I bought this. So I saw this cover, and I'm like, you know what? This looks like it could be some really stupid bullshit that I would probably at least be entertained by in a bad movie way. It's this film called Adventures at the Chocolate Factory. And I see this cover where there's a car with airplane wings flying through the sky. There's a family in there. It looks quirky, definitely European. From this, it's a foreign film, so I'm like, okay, Adventures, is this going to be like some really weird Euro, like, knockoff of Willy Wonka? And honestly, no, it's not. The plot of this is actually nothing like Willy Wonka. The titular chocolate factory itself only has about 15 minutes worth of screen time in this wacko kids movie. The dubbing is awful. The most of the movie is about this circus, and these kids try to steal this dog from the circus that's being mistreated, and there are these bullies that want to return the dog, and there's a whole car chase involving an excavator. It's not good. It's not even in a funny bad way. This was just like I said, I thought that could be a funny bad one, but. And then through the Kino Lorber sale, I love Kino Lorber. I'm always taking advantage of their sales. I got 4 titles. So going through each one of them here, we've got Hudson Hawk with Bruce Willis. Another one that I know has a very mixed reputation, but I had a lot of fun with this. 1991, it actually reminds me a lot of another 1991 movie called If Looks Could Kill with Richard Grieco. Very similar in tone and style to that one. I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, Bruce Willis, this is Bruce Willis when he's still in his prime. When that wisecracking, sarcastic, just easygoing Bruce Willis. The Last Boy Scout is one of my favorite performances of that. And this one's great. It's really quirky, but it's entertaining. I really had a good time seeing Danny Aiello in there. James Coburn is kind of the head villain with Sandra Bernhard, and there's a cool scene involving an ambulance. This was a first-time watch for me, but I really need to check off more movies from the prime of Bruce Willis there in the late 80s, early 90s. This was a Sylvester Stallone movie that I've never seen. I'm trying to collect as many of the actors. Stallone, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis. I'm trying to get as many of their movies as I can. So I went a little bit of a different route with Stallone, and I got Oscar. And I was laughing my ass off throughout You could tell it's based off a play. It is a very, very theatrical movie. But Stallone is excellent in it. His dry, just Stallone-ness with this dry comedic wit that he has to deliver through this entire movie was just fantastic. You have one hell of a cast. Kurtwood Smith, Yvonne DiCarlo, Tim Curry is in there, and he's got a great scene with Stallone, and William Atherton, Mark Metcalf. There's just Art LaFleur. Just it's a who's who of actors from the 80s, 90s, and before that. It's very stagey. You could tell it's a play, but something about the cast and Stallone and the jokes legitimately making me laugh. I thought Oscar was hilarious, and I really enjoyed it. And this one was a complete blind buy. I didn't know what I was getting into, but guys, let me tell you, I absolutely loved it. This is a direct-to-video 90s action bonkers B-movie fest starring Jim Belushi called Retroactive. It's basically Groundhog Day meets Breakdown with Kurt Russell, where Jim Belushi is playing a character I can only describe as Andrew Dice Clay doing a very bad Elvis impression. He's got these big sideburns, and he picks up this girl whose car breaks down, but then Jim Belushi kills his wife in front of her. But then there just so happens to be a government facility in the middle of the desert that makes a time machine. So they go back in time to try to stop Jim Belushi from killing his wife. But each time they go back to stop him, more and more people die. It's insane. And I loved it. It's such a bonkers B-movie direct-to-video jewel. But I had a complete blast. It's criminally underknown, and you could pick apart so many logical errors. They don't explain the time travel at all in this, which I loved even more. It wastes no time. It just gives you the premise, and it says, roll with it. And I had the time of my life. I had a lot of fun watching Retroactive. And lastly, we've got 52 Pickup with Roy Scheider. I like Roy Scheider. He's in this one from the 80s I really like called Night Game, which is like a cop procedural movie with all these weird quirks in it. Now this, on the other hand, is one of the sleaziest things you'll ever see. You've got Vanity, John Glover running like this porno house where they're killing people, and this is the definition of sleazy, back alley, adult, grimy 80s. But I love Roy Scheider, and it's a canon film, so of course towards the end you get some wacky explosion hijinks completely out of nowhere. And John Glover, when isn't he great, as just the seedy bad guy, that one especially. Now these are movies that my dad always really liked, and they have some of the greatest soundtracks of the 80s, courtesy of John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. I had never seen either of them. I knew nothing about the story of either of them, so I was glad to check out Eddie and the Cruisers and Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives, and I greatly enjoyed both of them. Eddie and the Cruisers is the superior one of the two of them. Eddie and the Cruisers, it's such a cool... There's a cool mystique around it. Like, what happened to Eddie? What was this fallout with the band? It's like a detective mystery movie. And the third act of Eddie and the Cruisers is filmed like a horror movie, weirdly enough. But the soundtrack is excellent. How can you not love On the Dark Side? And then Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives is like this really... it's a very unnecessary sequel. It did not need to be made at all, but I was entertained. It's this weird 80s, let's put a band together. So you've got Mark Holmes from Platinum Blonde and one of the guys from REO Speedwagon, and it's this weird band drama where Eddie is incognito, even though the only thing he's changed is that he has a mustache. And he puts this band together, and there's this artist woman that's in love with him. It's such a quirky one, but I was into it. I'm like, you know what? I like these characters. I wish Tom Berenger and more of the other people from the first one came back for it. But what can you do? But for both of them in this Blu-ray, absolute great purchase, because they're two great movies with some of the greatest songs and the greatest soundtracks of the 80s. So this was definitely great. This one, sadly, I know this one's got a big cult following, so I wanted to see it. Urban Legend. This one really didn't do anything for me. It is such a Scream-influenced late 90s university set horror film that just plays by all the beats of Scream, and there's a few inspired moments in there, but just the polish on it and everything, not really my brightest era of horror films, so it was fine. But the reveal, if you haven't seen it yet, I won't spoil it, but the reveal of who the killer is was absolutely laughable. The way that actor portrays themselves in the third act is terrible, and it made it funny. I'm like, I don't buy this at all. So I don't know. I know there's sequels to it too. I'm not in a hurry for those. This one was great though, and this is another one you guys are gonna be shocked. I've never seen this yet. This was a first time viewing, so I finally got around to watching Heathers. And when I say it's a black comedy, I mean the depths of space in a black hole. That's how dark of a comedy this is, but it's handled well. Christian Slater has always had such a natural charm and a natural charisma to him, especially in his younger 80s days like this, that you just sink into this role of him as a complete psycho, and all the scenes with him and his dad are so odd. And Winona Ryder's great as kind of the ignoramus girl that just doesn't really realize the depth of the situation she's in. And Heather. This was a good one. I liked Heathers. It was a lot of times with these really hyped 80s movies, I'll watch them and I'll just be like, what was all that about? But that one, it absolutely lived up. This one, I really don't have anything much to say. Untraceable. I'm like, okay, the serial killer, he's kidnapping people, live streaming their deaths, and it's like a Saw death trap kind of movie. That sounds entertaining. Unfortunately, this just plays off like the most generic serial killer procedural thing. And I mean, Diane Lane in the main part is good, but it just felt run of the mill. I'm like, it did not do anything for me, guy. Movies like that are tricky because there was a movie I bought and I ended up it was like 6 or 7 months ago maybe. I didn't even talk about it in the update because I had nothing to say about it. So I literally bypassed it. It was a movie with Ethan Hawke was in it. It was, I think Angelina Jolie. It was called Taking Lives. I didn't even talk about it in the update because it was the most generic thing. Like, I had nothing to say about it, and that's kind of what this is. I'm like, 30 Days of Night, on the other hand, was pretty good. I don't know anything about the graphic novel it's based on, but the makeup effects on the vampire monsters was really cool. There's some really cool death scenes and really cool comeuppance parts. Josh Hartnett, Melissa George, really nice cast. I don't know anything about the graphic novel. I don't know how it ends or anything, but I will say the ending of this movie is so stupid. Like, I'm like, it goes out of the way to try to do this sappy, dramatic thing, and I'm just like, I don't buy it. This is just coming off as really stupid. But overall, it's a nice, cold, claustrophobic, atmospheric setting. I don't buy for a minute. Like, throughout this movie, it'll say, like, it'll jump from, like, one day, and then all of a sudden it'll be like day 17. And I'm like, you people have survived this for over 2 weeks and we just haven't seen. So that kind of stuff stretched the credibility of it. But for what it was, I was entertained. And then I got 2 Paul W.S. Anderson movies after I did Event Horizon in the last update. And it's funny, these, weirdly enough, in this update, I've got 3 movies that have Jason Isaacs all in them. I did not plan on that, so he's just popping up. So these are the first 2 of those because he's in both of these. First one is Paul W.S. Anderson's first ever film, this weird anomaly called Shopping, which is like this 90s neo-noir kind of version. Almost feels like a 90s neo-noir Fast and the Furious, the original one, mixed with something like No Man's Land with Charlie Sheen, if you've ever seen that, because they're like car thieves and they break into these stores, and Jude Law just got out of jail and there's these raves they go to. It is among the most 90s things you'll ever see. And weirdly enough, the Bond villain from GoldenEye and the Bond villain from Tomorrow Never Dies, the first 2 Pierce Brosnan movies, they're both in this. So you got Carver and Agent 006 both in this. I thought that was interesting. A lot of British character actors in this. So yeah, if you're a fan of Paul W.S. Anderson movies and you're just curious about his output, this is a interesting way he started his career. And then for the Gary Busey collection, Paul Walker, Gary Busey. For the Gary Busey collection, I got his movie Soldier with Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell, Gary Busey. Jason Isaacs in that is like a drug dealer or something. And then in this, he's like the leader of this new wave of super soldiers. And this one was great. It got a little slow in the middle where Kurt Russell, this super soldier, finds out, him and his platoon are out of touch. They're old news. They're outdated. So he gets seemingly killed, even though he's not dead, and they get dumped on this waste planet where he lives with all these, rummaging, kind of off the grid, hermits. And he ends up having to protect them and their planet. And the third act of this turns into a crazy version of Die Hard. It's actually really fun and entertaining. And Busey, he doesn't really get to participate in the action too much, but it's good to see him in a movie like this. Paul W.S. Anderson's definitely a very stylish director, between those and Event Horizon. Last 2 Blu-rays, and then I got 3 DVDs. I got Money Monster with George Clooney. I was curious to see this one because it's got Jack O'Connell in it, and I loved him in this movie called Tower Block. And this sounded like an interesting conspiracy, stock market, hostage situation movie. And it's pretty good. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way to really rewatch or recommend, but it was a nifty little thriller. I didn't mind it. And for the one of 2, actually, for the Paul Walker collection here, and this is one, I've seen this a bunch of times in the past. It used to play on TV all the time. We actually watched this in my performing arts class, junior year of high school. We watched the whole movie in class, so nice to finally pick up and own a physical copy of Pleasantville. Always really liked Pleasantville. I could care less really about Tobey Maguire and his stuff, but J.T. Walsh, William H. Macy, Jeff Daniels, Reese Witherspoon, Paul Walker, they're all here, and it's a great one. And the 3 DVDs we have, the first one was a relatively blind buy, and I read the plot, and I go, that sounds like it could be a pretty cool movie. There's a hurricane, and you're trapped in a house with a tiger. That sounds like the just kind of obscure thriller that I would really get into, so I decided to check it out. It's called Burning Bright. And oh my god, did this suck. I did not like this whatsoever. And it's mostly thanks to this little shit character right here, the little brother. If you're related to anybody who's autistic or in any way or on the spectrum in any way, don't watch this, because this movie paints the worst possible picture of having an autistic sibling. I don't. I'm an only child. I'm not familiar with, dealing hands-on with that crowd. But the way it's presented in this movie, the kid is nothing but a crutch. He spends the entire thing screaming and whining like crazy. And the actual actor that plays him is not actually autistic. So there's that also. And then there's this whole conspiracy plot with their stepdad and why he let the tiger go and boarded him up in the house. This was just a mess. I'm like, that's an intriguing premise, but I thought this was absolutely terrible, and it was a very rough sit. And it opens with a Meatloaf cameo, and he's doing this weird accent. Like, I did not like that one whatsoever. And then this, be honest with you, I have not even watched this. I only got this for the Paul Walker collection. The DVD is called American Breakdown. It's not even a movie. All this was a collection of really short films by this Krzysztof Przyzuki. It's a collection of short films, all of which had almost nothing to do with one another, and they just threw them all together here. And each one of them starred, so you got Steve Carell, James Gandolfini, Josh Hartnett again, Paris Hilton, Paul Walker. It's you know, it's weird. I have not even watched it yet. The only reason I picked this up was for completion towards my Paul Walker collection. His picture's here and his name is on the cover, so that's the only reason I got this, really. And the next update I do, which is going to be the mostly horror one I do in October, we're going to close off the Paul Walker collection. If you've been following these for a while, you know every update I do a Gary Busey and a Paul Walker movie. Well, we're going to be closing the Paul Walker chapter in the next update. And I know exactly there's 2 releases I have left. And I haven't gotten them yet, but I'm going to get both of them to be in that. So, but yeah, this, completion's sake only. And I've saved this one for last, guys, because this is one of the strangest, most out there anomalies I've seen all year. Similar to Paul W.S. Anderson, this is a British film, a highly, highly stylized British film, and it apparently semi-autobiographical, although not exactly, but within the themes of the story. It's from the guy that directed Blade, Stephen Norrington, and it's this film I had previously never heard of called The Last Minute. And this is the unrated DVD of it. Oh my God, what the hell was this? But that said, I will say, I dug the hell out of it. It's weird, it's thought-provoking, it's philosophical, it's musical, it's stylish, it's thrilling, it's suspenseful. Did I mention it was weird? It opens with this monologue, which is amazing. Like, it's this really inspirational yet terrifying monologue about how short your life really is. And this thing dug into my brain. I've been thinking about that ever since. You got Jason Isaacs in here. I'm not going to say anything about his character. You need to see this movie. Make sure it's the 2-hour unrated version. I don't know what the difference is. The R-rated one's 10 minutes shorter, so I don't know what the difference is. You've got all this electronic rave soundtrack. And you have a character that is this big up-and-coming artist of some sort, but then his fame just crashes down and then he spirals. It turns into this weird version of Oliver Twist, where he's living with these orphans under the streets of London, and there's musical scenes and there's raves, and there's this whole message about finding yourself. It's bonkers, and the DVD is bonkers. There's this weird message about finding the special features within the catacombs of clandestine Soho, and none of the special features are listed out. You have to, it's like a game. You have to navigate through the thing to find the features, and none of them are labeled, so you're clicking on things not knowing what you're clicking on. There's a director commentary on here, which I watched, and it's actually very insightful. I highly recommend that. And even then, in here, it's got this weird fold-out just with all these cryptic lines in it about time and how time discovers the truth, and it's just all these philosophical quotes with pictures of the thing. And did I tell you, 2001, this is the most 2001 thing you will ever see in your life. It's out there, but it's such an anomaly, and I have never heard a single other human being on the planet talk about this, so it is just... I want everybody to see this just so you can experience the strangeness that is The Last Minute. So, Stephen Norrington, if you ever see this, you went from Blade to this. I don't know how the hell that happened, but this was a trip. It really was. And that concludes my August 13th DVD update, or DVD movie collection. It's all Blu-rays now. I'm migrating mostly towards Blu-rays. I mean, none of these 3 have Blu-rays. I would pick this one up on Blu-ray. It's no surprise why this fucking thing doesn't have one, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the Flashback Weekend video. I don't really know what's coming next. My next big video is going to be in October when I do my 9-day vacation out west. I've got a teaser trailer for that on my channel. I'm hoping that'll be a good trip. I don't really know too much about it going in, so we'll see how that goes. But September, the rest of August I'm going to be slammed with work, and then September is going to be kind of a quiet wild card month, so we'll see what happens. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Any thoughts on any of the movies? Make sure, I've got a good small little community going here, so leave your comments down below. We will talk to you guys later. Thank you.